Welcome and welcome back. My name is Tony, and this is Reading the Bible in a Year. Today is day 37, and we're going to cover Exodus 22 through 24. So, yesterday I was talking about listening to God, and I gave myself a challenge that I wouldn't turn on the radio in my car. I was going to be in the car for 6 hours, and I was going to try to do my best to listen to God. Well, it turned out yesterday, for the first time ever, I had to train a new person, and so I got to try to listen to God for about an hour before that started. And then, I just had to train this new person. But even in that hour, man, it's tough. It's tough. It's tough for me to be still and to still my mind. My mind's always racing, thinking things. I'm looking at the birds in the sky and being like, is that God trying to talk to me about, his creation? Or, my mind is just constantly going about something. It's really difficult just to be still and quiet my mind and listen to God. Extremely difficult. I'm not doing really well at it. So maybe if you're out there and you're good at this, or you've had some success, or you've got tips on specifics on how to do that, I'd love to hear it in your comments below. I'm probably going to try to be reaching out to people and try to figure out how I can improve in this area, because it's definitely a weakness for me. Also want to apologize. I don't know what's going on with the YouTube. It just happened the last few days. It doesn't let me share my video on Facebook. I share it on Facebook and I share it on my church's Facebook. And then, I just post it to YouTube. But it doesn't let me share it just in the last couple of days. Used to I could just hit share and just would share it. It's a public video, no problem. But in the last couple of days, it says you can't share it unless it's unlisted. And then I'd try to make it unlisted, and they would try to do it and would fail. And I shut the phone off, close down all my apps, open it up, try it again, and then it would work. That's my IT know-how. And so I did that last couple of days, but then I didn't go back. I didn't know I'd have to, and make it public again. So my day 35 and day 36, my wife just had told me I can't find them. And so I had to go into my YouTube settings and make those back public. So I think I know how to switch it to unlisted, to post it on Facebook and my church's Facebook, and then I'll go back into YouTube Studio and make it public. I'm going to try that. But if you're not getting these videos, it's not because I'm not putting them out there. So if you know me, reach out, let me know. Call me, whatever. Hopefully my wife will also keep me up on what's going on. But I thank you. I thank you for listening. I thank you for trying to get more God in your life, just like I'm trying to in mine for you. I know it's going to be a blessing. And I pray that it's as much a blessing for you as it is for me, because it's been tremendous. And I've learned, I learn every day. Amazingly enough, I still learn a little something every day from every day we've done it so far. So for 36 days, I've learned at least 36 different things. So without any further ado, let's say a quick prayer and we'll get into Exodus 22 through 24. So dear Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for all your blessings. Thank you for another day of life. Thank you for giving me this word and allowing me the ability to read it. Lord, I ask for your help for me and for anyone else who has trouble with it and listening to you and being still. That's maybe the hardest one for me, is just being still and silence in my mind and trying to listen to you, and so I can find your will for my life, Lord. And so I pray for your help with that. Lord, please open our eyes to see the message today, open our ears to hear it, open our hearts to receive it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Exodus 22. There's a big old smudge on my glasses. Nobody be seeing anything with that on there. Okay, that's better. Exodus 22. If someone steals an ox or a lamb and slaughters or sells it, the thief must pay 5 cattle in place of the ox and 4 sheep in place of the lamb. If the thief is caught while breaking in and is hit hard and dies, there is no blood guilt. But if it happens after daybreak, there is blood guilt. A thief must make full restitution for what is stolen. The thief who is unable to pay is to be sold for his thieving. If caught red-handed with the stolen goods and the ox or donkey or lamb is still alive, the thief pays double. If someone grazes livestock in a field or vineyard but lets them loose so they graze in someone else's field, restitution must be made from the best of the owner's field or vineyard. If fire breaks out and spreads to the brush so that the sheaves of grain or the standing grain or even the whole field is burned up, whoever started the fire must pay for the damages. If someone gives a neighbor money or things for safekeeping and they are stolen from the neighbor's house, the thief, if caught, must pay back double. If the thief is not caught, the owner must be brought before God to determine whether the owner was the one who took the neighbor's goods. In all cases of stolen goods, whether oxen, donkey, sheep, clothing, anything in fact, missing of which someone says, "That's mine," both parties must come before the judges. The one the judges pronounce guilty must pay double to the other. If someone gives a donkey or ox or lamb or any kind of animal to another for safekeeping and it dies or is injured or lost and there is no witness, an oath before God must be made between them to decide whether one has laid hands on the property of the other. The owner must accept this and no damages are assessed. But if it turns out it was stolen, the owner must be compensated. If it has been torn by wild beasts, the torn animal must be brought in as evidence. No damages have to be paid. If someone borrows an animal from a neighbor and it gets injured or dies while the owner is not present, he must pay for it. But if the owner was with it, he doesn't have to pay. If the animal was hired, the payment covers the loss. If a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged to be married and sleeps with her, he must pay the marriage price and marry her. If her father absolutely refuses to give her away, the man still must pay the marriage price for virgins. Don't let a sorceress live. Anyone who has sex with an animal gets the death penalty. Anyone who sacrifices to a god other than God alone must be put to death. Don't abuse or take advantage of strangers. You remember, were once strangers in Egypt. Don't mistreat widows or orphans. If you do and they cry out to me, you can be sure I'll take them most seriously. I'll show my anger and come raging among you with my sword, and your wives will end up widows and your children orphans. If you lend money to my people, to any of the down and out among you, don't come down hard on them and gouge them with interest. If you take your neighbor's coat as security, give it back before nightfall. It may be your neighbor's only covering. What else does that person have to sleep in? And if I hear the neighbor crying out from the cold, I'll step in. I'll compassionate. Don't curse God, and don't damn your leaders. Don't be stingy as your wine vats fill up. Dedicate your firstborn sons to me, the same with your cattle and sheep. They are to stay for 7 days with their mother, then give them to me. Be holy for my sake. Don't eat mutilated flesh you find in the fields. Throw it to the dogs. 23. Don't pass on malicious gossip. Don't link up with a wicked person and give corrupt testimony. Don't go along with the crowd in doing evil, and don't mess up your testimony in a case just to please the crowd. And just because someone is poor, don't show favoritism in a dispute. If you find your enemy's ox or donkey loose, take it back to him. If you see the donkey of someone who hates you lying helpless under its load, don't walk off and leave it. Help it up. When there is a dispute concerning your poor, don't tamper with the justice due them. Stay clear of false accusations. Don't contribute to the death of innocent and good people. I don't let the wicked off the hook. Don't take bribes. Bribes blind perfectly good eyes and twist the speech of good people. Don't take advantage of a stranger. You know what it's like to be a stranger. You were strangers in Egypt. Sow your land for 6 years and gather in its crops, but in the 7th year leave it alone and give it a rest so that your poor may eat from it. What they leave, that the wildlife have. Do the same with your vineyards and olive groves. Work for 6 days and rest the seventh, so your ox and donkey may rest, and your servants and migrant workers may have the time to get their needed rest. Listen carefully to everything I tell you. Don't pay attention to other gods. Don't so much as mention their names. 3 times a year you are to hold a festival for me. Hold the spring festival of unraised bread, when you eat unraised bread for 7 days at the time of the month of Abib, as I commanded you. That was the month you came out of Egypt. No one should show up before me empty-handed. Hold the summer festival of harvest, when you bring in the first fruits of all the work in the fields. Hold the autumn festival of ingathering at the end of the season, when you bring in the year's crops. 3 times a year, all your males are to appear before the Master God. Don't offer the blood of a sacrifice to me with anything that has yeast in it. Don't leave the fat from my festival offering out overnight. Bring the choice first produce of the year to the house of your God. Don't boil a kid in its mother's milk. Now get yourselves ready. I'm sending my angel ahead of you to guard you in your travels, to lead you to the place that I prepared. Pay close attention to him. Obey him. Don't go against him. He won't put up with your rebellions because he's acting on my authority, but if you obey him and do everything I tell you, I'll be an enemy to your enemies. I'll fight those who fight you. When my angel goes ahead of you and leads you to the land of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, I'll clear the country of them. So don't worship or serve their gods. Don't do anything they do, because I'm going to wipe them off the face of the earth and smash their sacred phallic pillars to bits. But you serve your God, and you'll bless your food and your water. I'll get rid of the sickness among you. There won't be any miscarriages nor barren women in your land. I'll make sure you live full and complete lives. I'll send my terror ahead of you and throw those people you're approaching into a panic. All you'll see of your enemies is the back of their necks. And I'll send despair on ahead of you. It will push the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites out of your way. I won't get rid of them all at once, lest the land grow up in weeds and the wild animals take over. Little by little, I'll get them out there while you have a chance to get your crops growing and make the land your own. I will make your borders stretch from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea and from the wilderness to the Euphrates River. I'm turning everyone living in that land over to you. Go ahead and drive them out. Don't make any deals with them or their gods. They are not to stay in the same country with you, lest they get to you to sin by worshiping their gods. Beware. That's a huge danger. 24. He said to Moses, "Climb the mountain to God, you and Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 of the elders of Israel. They will worship from a distance. Only Moses will approach God. The rest are not to come close, and the people are not to climb the mountain at all." So Moses went to the people and told them everything God had said, all the rules and regulations. They all answered in unison, "Everything God said, we'll do." Then Moses wrote it all down, everything God had said. He got up early the next morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, using 12 pillar stones for the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he directed young Israelite men to offer whole burnt offerings and sacrifice peace offerings of bulls. Moses took half the blood and put it in bowls. The other half he threw against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it as people listened. They said, "Everything God said we'll do. Yes, we'll obey." Moses took the rest of the blood and threw it out over the people, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant which God has made with you. Out of all these words I have spoken." Then they climbed the mountain, Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and saw the God of Israel. He was standing on a pavement of something like sapphires, pure, clear, sky blue. He didn't hurt these pillar leaders of the Israelites. They saw God, and they ate and drank. God said to Moses, "Climb higher up the mountain and wait for me. I'll give you tablets of stone, the teaching and commandments that I've written to instruct them." So Moses got up, accompanied by Joshua, his aide, and Moses climbed up the mountain of God. He told the elders of Israel, "Wait for us here until we return to you. You have Aaron and Hur with you. If there are any problems, go to them." Then Moses climbed the mountain. The cloud covered the mountain. The glory of God settled over Mount Sinai. The cloud covered it for 6 days. On the 7th day he called out of the cloud to Moses. In the view of the Israelites below, the glory of God looked like a raging fire at the top of the mountain. Moses entered the middle of the cloud and climbed the mountain. Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Recap day 37, Exodus 22 through 24. God talks more about the laws for restitution, directing his people towards a civil, just society that treats others with respect and honors life. He unpacks specific implications of the 10 Commandments. For instance, a thief often has to pay back more than he stole, so the consequences serve as deterrents. These laws may feel intimidating if you're the one who's committing the sin, but if you're the victim, it's easier to appreciate why God established these laws. He protects female virgins by threatening several years' wages from the men who take advantage of them. This isn't referring to rape. Deuteronomy 22, verse 25 says the penalty for rape is death. This law refers to the seduction that leads to consensual sex. God also forbids charging interest. Most interest rates in those days started at 25%. But guess who borrows money? The needy. God said it's cruel to increase the burden of one of his needy kids. Instead, he emphasizes compassion towards the poor. He says to care for the sojourners, widows, and orphans. He shows special attention to the most vulnerable. He teaches his people to love each other and not to exploit each other. They have a lot to learn about behavior. They've been oppressed. They've lived with a scarcity mentality. So he reminds them to be compassionate because he is compassionate, to be open-handed because he's their provider. Then he addresses sorcery. Like the divination we've seen before, God takes it seriously. It's punishable by death. These practices engaging with spirits for guidance and power, spirits who aren't on God's team. When people seek answers from the enemy instead of God, it's not only idolatry, it's treason against the kingdom of light. God orders death for anyone who practices this or lures people into their web of wickedness. He aims to protect his people from the enemy's subtle deceptions. He's also attentive to the enemy's tactics when it comes to the land he's giving his kids. He says to break the stone pillars the pagans have set up and drive anyone who worships other gods. In fact, he'll even do some of that driving out on his own. It's important to note that the distinction has nothing to do with race, but has everything to do with idolatry. We know this because sojourners are welcomed, but not those who worship other gods. God is preserving the family for the birth of the Messiah. There are lots of people who say they worship God, but who also acknowledge the power and validity of other gods. This is called monolatry, a hybrid of monotheism and idolatry. While he never denies other gods exist, and in fact, he seems to indicate in the first commandment that they do, he continues to point out that Israel's loyalty must be to him alone. All other gods are false gods, lesser gods, demon gods, idols, and they're important before Yahweh. They're impotent before Yahweh. YHWH. Monotheism affirms that YHWH is the one true God. He orders 3 feasts that serve as reminders of his provision. We've seen the Feast of Unleavened Bread before, and today we see the Feast of Harvest and the Feast of Ingathering. These are both feasts of thanks and trust. They celebrate God's provision at the start and end of the harvest season, and their feasting shows they trust God to provide for them in the future. When the people enter into this covenant with God at Mount Sinai, agreeing to do all he says, Moses offers a sacrifice and throws blood on them. While this sounds disturbing, it's likely a symbol that they're tied to the covenant, much like when God had Abraham split the animals in half and then passed between them. Also, being sprinkled with blood often symbolizes being purified and atoned for. It actually foreshadows Christ's death covering us. Then Moses ascends the mountain. Today's God shot. God is so protective of his people, but he also commands them to show kindness to those they consider enemies or those who hate them. This is the whole reason we're in a relationship with him to begin with. We all started out as his enemies, and this is how he has treated us, with mercy and compassion, stepping into our need despite the fact that we've waged war against him with our sin and rebellion. He is a God who pursues his enemies and turns them into his family. He's where the joy is. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll be back reading to you again tomorrow.